Hello learners, welcome to Professional Training Academy, your own learning center. Today in this quick video, I'm going to explain the concept of epic and user stories, and we will try and learn more on how do we create user stories. User stories is a very important part of your Agile. When you are following the Agile methodology, this is how you maintain or manage your entire requirement, right? So let's quickly look at about user stories. So user stories is the smallest piece of deliverable, right? Smallest piece of requirement which can be developed independently. When we do the entire requirement elicitation activity, when we receive requirements from client, right, we receive big piece of requirements, maybe which can be further sliced and diced, right? The objective of any user story is that we should fine tune to such a level where the user story can be developed independently, right? So if you look at this image, which clearly reflects how the user stories can be further divided and the relationship between epic and theme. So at the beginning of this, when I talked about that all the requirements are large set of requirements, mostly big piece of requirements, these are identified as themes in our terminology, in Agile terminology. Theme is a large set of requirements, right? If you are building an entire system, theme is that system where we want to build. The system will have different capabilities. We can call it different components. These components are identified as epic, right? One system will have multiple components. And when we break the large piece of requirement, the entire system into components, it is called epic, right? So if you see in this diagram, a large system, which is a subset of requirement, a complete set of requirement is now broken down into epic. And each epic is again, it's a component, for example, right? And the component will have different functions. For example, if you are referring to one of the screen, right? The screen has multiple functions. You can search something, you see the results on the output grid, you can export that information, you can play around with the data, you see a lot of information that is available. And there are different other functions also. Now, all these requirements are the part of that epic, the big piece of requirement. But in an Agile methodology, when we are building the infrastructure, when we are creating the application in an iterative and incremental manner, we further break that peak of epic into small user stories. And these user stories, the objective is that one user story, first of all, we should be able to develop and complete this independently, and we should be able to complete that user story in a specified time, which is called sprint, right? So in the sprint, when we do the sprint planning at the beginning, we plan that how many stories we can complete based on the capacity available. The objective behind this further segregation is that each story is an independent, each requirement rather is an independent piece of the big requirement, which if we take it, we can work independently and complete it and keep on building iteratively, right? So if an epic has, say, we have further divided using some of our technique, maybe a decomposition technique, maybe some other technique, when we break a big piece of requirement into small requirements, say for this epic, there are 6 stories that we have identified and we have created 6 different stories, right? When all these 6 stories are complete, this component or this epic is complete, right? Similarly, when all the epics are complete, then this theme is complete. So the entire project is of 6 months, right? And in the entire 6 months, we want to complete the theme, right? We break that into component, and components have further broken it down into small independent requirements. We keep on building, we keep on adding. At the end of the project, we'll be able to complete everything, right? If you see in the diagram, it's a very good diagram to represent the relationship between theme, epic, and user stories. and also how the user stories are work. So that we will cover in some other video, where the relationship between stories and task will be explained. Task is not a separate requirement. It is a task within the user story, right? So for example, if the user story, if we say that user story is complete, the user story has to be coded, the development activity has to happen, the QA activity has to happen, the implementation and configuration has to happen. All these are different tasks. When all the tasks of that story is complete, it means that story is complete, right? Now, since I mentioned that we are going to cover only user stories, so let's dig a bit deeper about user stories, right? So user story, definition wise, is a brief description of the need, right? That is a part of the product. And we always write user stories in the form of the user. Like the end user is expecting to do this activity, and this is what is the feature that end user expects, right? And there's a specific format of writing the user story, and the format is as a user role, right? As a role, I need capability, right? I am a user, I want certain capability. This is my need. And when I have certain need, what do I want to achieve, right? I want to achieve some benefit. So the standard format goes like this. This is how we have to create our user stories. User stories are nothing but the requirement from the user perspective, which follow a standard format. As a role, I need capability so that I receive benefit, right? Role is the person who is going to do the activity. If you are a user role, for example, you are an online banking, you want to use online banking, you are an online banking user. Right? If you are accessing a website or content, you are a subscribed user. User can be anybody who is going to use that function. Capability is what do you actually want to do? That is the capability. And when you want to do something, what is the benefit? Why do you want to do? So receive benefit is the value that this activity is going to bring to you. That is the high level definition of user story. I have also collated some more information for our learning purpose. A practice on these things will definitely help us to write effective user stories for any function, right? If you see, the users is already mentioned. It's a mobile user or web user. And then we have a big piece of requirement, which is Epic. And for mobile user, one of the requirement is the registration, right? How do I register to become a registered mobile user, right? So registration at one go is not the functionality that we achieve in together. We further break it down into user story. So I will just complete a registration part as part of this video. Rest all you can practice on your own and decide and start writing more requirement in the form of user stories. So for registration, there can be different functions, right? When we pick up a user story, the objective is that we pick up that user story and complete it, right? So if you see for registration, there are 4 user stories that are identified and mentioned here. All these 4 user stories, when complete, it means that your entire registration function is complete. But at one go, we can work on one of the story, and maybe next iteration, we can work on some other story. And when all the stories of this registration process is complete, it means that the registration process, that functionality is created, right? Now we have learned that there's a specific format. So we have broken down registration into 4 individual independent requirements. And these requirements, when we are writing in the format, following user story format, we will write like this. The first story goes like this. As a user, I'm the user. Which user? I'm a mobile user. I can register for the application by entering my email, password, and confirming my password, right? This is a standard function that has to be built into the system. If a new mobile user wants to register themselves, right? What do? They will enter an email ID, they will enter a password, and they will confirm the password, right? Once this is done, email ID is entered, password is validated, the user is a registered user, right? So that is one. We can work and create this story independently. In integration, there will be some additional factor as part of registration process, right? So the other story that has been identified, as a user, I will receive a confirmation email once I have registered for the application, right? So here I am registering. Maybe when you register, you see registration successful. At the same time, another story says that there's a requirement to do the confirmation on an email. That is the another function that we have built here. That is all. This is the notification that you are successfully registered yourself, right? Next story, as a user, I can register for the application through Facebook. Maybe this is a very, very specific requirement, right? The next is, as a user, I can upload a profile photo and add my name to the account. All these are some of the specific requirements, right? At one go, we can work on all these stories, and one story at a time we complete, or based on the priority. Like we talked, Scrum methodology has a Scrum framework, has a specific set of activities that has to be done, right? But when we are identifying all these stories by further breaking down the big piece of requirement, which is Epic, we identify all the stories and we write it in the form of user story. And if you have to capture all that in an Excel, you can use a template like this to capture all the requirements. It is linked to the big piece of Epic. And one another thing that we have seen, that everything is driven by the theme, right? So if all these functions are, let's say, for example, if all these epics are done, means the theme of this feature is achieved, right? So this is high level, the relationship between theme, epic, and user story. And when we have to write a user story, after identification of all the requirements, we follow the standard format of writing user stories, which we have gone through as part of this class, right? Feel free to reach out to us. The details are here. For more information on our Agile Business Analysis practical sessions, we have practical-based Agile sessions running throughout the month, different workshops. Reach out to us for more information. Thank you.